All right, welcome. Seis de Mayo, our town meeting program, the live talk show on KLAM, which is brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local cell provider and wireless data provider, providing your local talk show so we can talk about local stuff. See, it all just fits together. We try to keep it simple in radio so we can understand. And a number of things to get to today, so we're going to just launch right in with the city's briefing that fed out live yesterday on the city YouTube channel, and which is archived on their channel, actually, as well as ours, because we put those briefings on youtube.com/Cordova TV. But in case you missed it or are not a computer person, we're just going to lay it out here for you on the radio. So we kind of all start on the same page as far as the latest information from the city. And then we're going to get on to the meeting that's coming up tonight, the special meeting at 6 p.m., which could include some plans to reopen these businesses that are in the non-essential category. The state opened up or paved the way for those to open up if they want to last week. Cordova wanted to wait a little bit so it could be digested by the local experts and make sure that whatever Cordova does is based on Cordova knowledge and expertise. And we'll also go over, in case anybody is still unclear, the state requirements for any non-essential businesses that are reopening. And a lot of them seem to know that, but just so everybody kind of understands the full picture, we're going to go over that stuff today, thanks to some information by the Chamber of Commerce. So let's start with the city's presentation. It was Mayor Copeland that took place yesterday.
This is an incident management team's community update for Cordova, Alaska. And in the midst of this tumultuous time, there's some comfort in the fact that Mother Nature doesn't fail us, and we can savor the miracle of returning migrations, both of birds and salmon. I had a chance to get out this weekend and enjoy that firsthand. Testing update, as of yesterday afternoon, we had conducted 59 tests. And again, we have more capacity, and we're starting to do a little screening, so you'll see these numbers climbing. We still have 0 positive results, and we're awaiting results on 15 of those tests. We have a local healthcare testing capacity of 1,134 tests available. So some new announcements in the harbor. Hand washing stations are in place at the tops of all ramps in the harbor. These are foot operated for both soap and water. Please remember to use soap, as it is one of the most effective means of eradicating germs and contaminants from your hands. More stations at the bottom of the ramps will be installed as parts arrive for them. We want to thank the team of Doug Pettit, Jacob Borodkin, and Tom Baylor for their hard work to get these stations installed. And bulletin boards and signage are being installed by Tom McGann and Tony Bocci. The quarantine flags are available at the Harbor Master office. Again, these are the Lima flags that all crews must fly if they're quarantining their vessels. Upland quarantining locations for fishermen to quarantine on their boats on land are now available, including the Odiak Camper Park. Fishermen are highly encouraged to quarantine on their boats on the land. This keeps you out of the harbor, and you can have a secure place to work on your boat on the uplands. Just call the Parks and Rec Department at 424-7282. Parks and Recreation, 424-7282. And of course, that's a 907 area code. Showers are now available at the Bob Corn Memorial Pool for those living in the harbor. Just again, call Parks and Recreation at 424-7282 to purchase a shower package. The COVID-19 website, the mutual aid agreement, fillable online forms are available on the website at covid19.cityofcordova.net. So again, that's COVID, the numbers 19.cityofcordova.net for your mutual aid forms. And those are required as you're entering the community to conduct business, or if you're in the community conducting business. A few reminders: essential workers are allowed to move about as needed to do their work. They may not go into stores or public places until their 14-day quarantine period is done. They may go to work and home and exercise and outdoor recreation within the bounds of their own domicile or their own property. They need to get their groceries via pickup or delivery. Once the quarantine is done, they're bound by the same rules as the rest of the community: masks, social distancing, etc. City Council. The council will be discussing a reopen Cordova plan at its meeting Wednesday. The proposal is put together by a committee of business, emergency management, and other leaders. And that special meeting begins at 6 p.m., and that will be followed by a regular meeting at 7 p.m. Community care. A shout out and kudos to the essential workers preparing food for our children: Sandy Ponte, Sandy Ronagard, and Stacy Chappell. These amazing folks have fed 400 students and pre-kindergarten children breakfast and lunch since school closed. That's roughly 4,000 meals per week. In closing, the next City of Cordova update is scheduled for Wednesday, May 6th. Tune your radio to KCDB FM 100.9 and KLAM AM 1450 at 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. And that's the daily radio updates. All information is available on our Cordova COVID-19 website. Again, covid19.cityofcordova, it's all one word, .net. covid19.cityofcordova.net. Have a good week, Cordova. Enjoy the sunshine, and more importantly, stay safe out there. And don't forget your masks if you go out in public.
Okay, that, again, was the city briefing that came out at 4 p.m. yesterday. And if you want to listen to it again, of course, it'll be part of the archive of this show, which will go on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. After we're done, Robbie uploads it as soon as he can. And you can also view it on our channel as its own item or on the city's YouTube channel, which I always go to by going to cityofcordova.net and clicking their YouTube link. And that, by the way, is where you'll want to go to view and participate in the special city council meeting tonight. Mayor Copeland referenced that. There's a special meeting at 6, followed by the regular meeting at 7. This is not a noon special meeting like we have most other weeks, because this is the time, with it being the first Wednesday of the month, for the regular meeting. And to dig into this agenda a little bit, which, by the way, you can download for yourself and read, if you would like, from the cityofcordova.net website, special city council meeting for May 6th. They're going to start out with an IMT report, the incident management team, to get the latest from the team there, although they may move that to the regular meeting at 7 p.m. for to make more time in the special meeting. And then audience comments regarding agenda items. And the primary focus of this special meeting, of course, is discussing and maybe approving a plan to start doing some of this reopening of the quote-unquote non-essential businesses as defined by the state. And if you have any comments on that, do you think it's a good idea? Do you not? Either way, then you'll want to participate in the audience comments, which they typically do by phone. And as you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the phone number there at the bottom of the screen. There are also some letters in the packet that you might want to read, one each, actually, that shares sort of two different sides of this matter of Cordova showing some more caution than the state. One of them came from Susie Hirschleb, the resource unit leader of the incident management team, responding to some extent about a comment that was made last week that the IMT is not communicating with local businesses, and saying that it's kind of dejecting when people make blanket statements like that. And that's a tough issue. I can kind of see it on from both sides. On the one hand, this team is absolutely busting its tail to get accurate information out as quickly as they can in a very dynamic, ever-changing, constantly and rapidly evolving situation. On the other hand, I was kind of surprised by the assertion, I forget who it was who testified, the business owner that testified last week, that, you know, this business owner felt that folks weren't being notified, particularly in that kind of perfect storm that occurred when the state began to reopen businesses, but and Cordova initially looked like it was going to follow the state guidance, and then that kind of changed all of a sudden, which happened for good reason, by the way. And I want to, I think it's valuable to state again that even the council didn't mention a very important element in the flow of events that led to some of the confusion on Friday, April 24th. Because that's when a number of the businesses that were planning to open under the governor's order were going to do their soft reopenings, and then they heard from the city that they couldn't. Part of why the notice from the city came late in that process is that when the governor's order came out, there was very specific language in that order that said local governments don't have any choice except to follow the state guidelines on reopening non-essential businesses. That was absolutely clear. So, throughout the process, there was no need for the city to notify anybody that the city was going to do anything different, because the city couldn't do anything different as far as it knew. Now, for some weird reason, right in the middle of all of that, the governor's administration changed its mind, probably because they heard from a number of communities that didn't want to reopen their non-essential businesses that quickly. That would be my guess. But that language that said municipalities or cities or villages can't do things more strictly, that language just disappeared. There was no fanfare. There was no real clear notice to the communities. But because the city has got its attorneys and its watchdog folks on the team, they found out, oh, okay, we can do this a little more slowly. And so they implemented the tighter restrictions, which actually took the form of just keeping things as they were at that point, which businesses could be open and which couldn't. Well, that, of course, created some confusion for some of the businesses, as we'll see in another letter here, and created some frustration. And I thought to myself at the time when I heard that person testifying, you know, it's too bad there isn't like an email distribution list for all of the businesses. The city must know what all the businesses are because they have all the licenses. And you'd think the vast majority of businesses now would have email and that it'd be easy to send out a blast email. But that's just me speculating. Maybe that's not easy. That's just what occurred to me when I heard somebody say that they didn't have any idea that the extra restrictions had been implemented by Friday the 24th, when non-essential businesses were supposed to be able to start reopening. And some of these businesses, assuming the state guidance would rule, some of those businesses had started to take appointments, and then suddenly we're having to cancel appointments. Now, that's just the nature of this thing. Things, you know, they evolve and change very rapidly. But at any rate, Susie's point was, I think, in a nutshell, to say that the IMT is dropping the ball and they're screwing this up because they can't tell everybody everything instantly is dejecting to the team, because they have been doing their best to, well, actually, let me just read this part. This is, again, Susie speaking. She is the resource unit leader for the incident management team. On Friday, April 24th, the IMT began communicating with local hairdressers who presented mutual aid agreements. And on the 24th, there was a discussion regarding the state mandate versus the city mandate. The team suggested the businesses yield until more information became available. Communications continued over the weekend as things developed. On April 25th, the hairdressers were provided with a link to the city's new website with the updated mandate. I think that the businesses who are taking initiative and demonstrating responsibility by filling out and emailing their mutual aid agreements have been adequately informed. So that kind of speaks to the ever-changing landscape. And Susie goes on to say that people need to accept that perfection is not realistic. Doing the best you can with the resources you have is a realistic expectation, and she thinks the IMT members who are tasked with communicating with local businesses are largely meeting that. Now, of course, that's one person's opinion, and opinions will vary. There is another letter in here that would be an interesting read for you by Emilia Babick regarding plans to reopen Seaside Salon. And she talks about the efforts that she's made to run the business in the safest possible manner. Talks about how the state said it was okay to open the business. Didn't understand why serving one local client a day was putting the community at risk. Reemphasized again taking extreme measures to mitigate any potential exposure in the salon. Talking about how she's not open to walk-in traffic. She'd work one-to-one, private appointments only, locking the door when the client comes in, asking folks not to bring anyone to their appointment, not taking any out-of-town clients this summer at all, actually. Asking clients when they make their reservation a series of questions regarding travel, how they feel, symptoms, and so forth. Making clients wait in their car when they pull up to the appointment and to call when they're outside to be let in. That they have to have face masks and gloves to come into the business and wear them through the entire appointment. And then when a client leaves, how she'll be sanitizing all the surfaces and tools in the bathroom and the whole salon. She goes on to say, when the governor announced salon openings, I did start booking appointments for the week that I had to cancel after finding out the city wants to keep non-essential businesses closed till further notice. My family and I have been quarantined as well as my business being closed since March 13th. We've been taking major precautions to stay home and do our part in flattening the curve and not exposing ourselves to the virus. And then wraps up by asking the council to consider the safe reopening of her small private salon as soon as possible. She'll fully comply and understand the need to tighten the rules as the fishing season approaches. However, quote, I truly do not know how my small business will survive if the city keeps me shut down, end quote. So that's kind of, and again, these letters are in the packet, so you can download them and read them. They're on the city website, cityofcordova.net. And last week, again, the city heard from the Chamber of Commerce. They heard from a business owner with a very similar perspective to what Emma shared there. And they also heard from folks who would really like to keep the case count at zero using every means possible. And, the council has to balance that. And it was a close vote, 4-3. Both times this issue was sort of voted on. And the 4 that voted no last week all said that what they wanted was another week to hear from the local experts to make sure that Cordova's plan to reopen was based on the best minds in Cordova, not just the people thinking about this in the state. Because Fairbanks, Anchorage, Glen Allen, Delta Junction, take your pick. Their situations are different than ours, being off the road system, having a big influx of people coming in for fishing. And so now here we are a week later, and this is going to come up again. And we'll see if at least one of the 4 that were concerned have had those concerns satisfied or not. That's what this meeting is about. Let me read you here the cover letter for what's on the agenda for consideration. And this is from Helen Howarth, our city manager, regarding the Open Cordova Responsibly plan. She says, Emergency Order 2020-06, revises previous rules to bring the city of Cordova in line with state of Alaska COVID-19 mandates. Adopting Emergency Order 2020-06 will bring the city rules in line with previous state mandates as well as any new state mandates as they are released. In addition to Emergency Order 2020-06, attached are 2 documents related to reopening Cordova as recommended by the Medical and Incident Command teams. And here she means, of course, the local medical and IMT. All of these proposed documents are presented as Cordova's Open Responsibly Plan and are presented to provide council the opportunity to amend, repeal, or revise in whole or in part. Now, one of those attachments is called Safe Cordova Roadmap to Reopening Cordova. That document outlines the framework medical and incident command teams will use to safely determine how to reopen the city. There are 2 phases. Red status is the most restrictive with limitations on movement, closure of non-essential businesses, and strict health requirements. Cordova has been operating in this status since the beginning of the emergency order. Depending on how Cordova is meeting the stated metrics, city health rules may be adjusted to allow progression to yellow status. And again, the red light status and the yellow light status are both in this packet, if you want to read them. And furthermore, the packet includes State of Alaska Health Mandate 16. This is the one that came out a while back that was allowing non-essential businesses to start opening on April 24th around the state. That's the one called the Reopen Alaska Responsibly Plan. That's Health Mandate 16, and it's in the packet. And Helen says this mandate outlines the businesses that are permitted to open and the rules they must follow to meet state health requirements. The city will follow this mandate as long as metrics outlined in the Safe Cordova Roadmap yellow status are met. And then down at the bottom here, it says, the medical team has determined Cordova can safely progress to yellow status at this time and recommends opening of local businesses following the rules of State Health Mandate 16. Now, that's the piece of news that the other 4 people were waiting for, so that may end up being the pivot point in the meeting. No way to know for sure. We'll see. But we're going to go over again in this show those requirements, just in case there's anybody out there that thinks that hearing Cordova can safely progress to the opening of local businesses means business as usual, because it absolutely does not. Any businesses that want to reopen under this relaxing of the rules still need to know and follow all of these state rules for how to do this safely. And if you don't, if you're a restaurant or a hair salon or any type of business that is now allowed to reopen and you don't follow these rules, first off, there are very stiff state penalties. I mean, big dollars and even jail time for doing this wrong. That's point 1. And point 2, if too many businesses open up irresponsibly, not following the rules, you can bet that the tighter restrictions are going to come back in and all these non-essential businesses are going to get shut back down. Which I don't say is a judgment on anybody, far from it. That's just what the papers, that's what the documentation says. All across the state, they're watching this, actually. Even the communities whose non-essential businesses were allowed to reopen back on April 24th. The governor was very clear that they're doing this in phases to see how it works. And every 2 weeks or so, they modify the state regulations to get either a little looser or a little tighter, depending on the case count. Because if they discover at the end of this week, for example, that there's a massive spike in cases because of the initial reopening phase for the non-essential businesses, they're certainly not going to expand to the extra capacity and might even have to dial it back. It's all based on how well everybody functions under the limitations that are set for these different phases. So again, as we have been throughout this possible reopening phase, we really want to encourage all our local business owners to make sure that they understand. And again, I expect most of them have. But in case there are any outliers, somebody that hasn't been paying attention, it's proven to be very easy in this thing for someone to say, oh, I heard, a bunch more of the local businesses can open. I'm one of those local businesses that got shut down. I get to just reopen and go back to the way things were. No. If you do that, you could get in a whole lot of trouble, and you could blow it for everybody else. That's the point that the officials are trying to make. So again, up to now, Cordova has been in this red light status where essential businesses can operate. There's limited access to the physical locations of the non-essential businesses except for remote operations, if they can do online orders and like curbside pickup or something like that. And then there's also been physically distant outdoor recreation allowed at least 6 feet away. And this is the one that had, the unnecessary travel is prohibited and various stay-at-home orders and a number of other things. Now, what we're hearing or seeing in the packet is the medical team and the incident management team saying they think we can move to condition yellow here. And I want to go through this yellow light document, although, again, you can see it by downloading the packet for tonight's special meeting. So allowable activities under yellow alert, let's say. Partially reopening low-risk non-essential businesses following State of Alaska Health Mandate 16 Phase 1. Limited openings using strict physical distancing, frequent cleaning practices, and other preventative measures. Delivery methods for goods like curbside and pickup and to-go are still encouraged. Now, they give examples here. Restaurants with appropriate physical distancing, staff PPE, frequent cleaning, and other preventative measures such as fewer tables and increased spacing between customers. And again, the numbers of this are laid out in the state plan. For personal care services with appropriate physical distancing, appointment only, one-on-one services, and so forth. Non-public facing businesses would institute distancing measures, limit gathering of employees, require face coverings, and protections for vulnerable workers. And then public-facing businesses would institute distancing measures, alternate pickup and delivery methods, require face coverings, and limit occupancy. This yellow alert status would also put into place that some non-emergency or non-urgent medical procedures can proceed, and that low-risk outdoor recreation activities are allowed. Now, in order to make things work overall under the yellow light status, they have these protective measures that are recommended, again, by our local medical and local incident management folks. They'll closely monitor community risk metrics to evaluate any change in the wrong direction, including the ability to quickly roll back allowable activities to red light, again, if the data shows worsening conditions. Under the yellow condition, limited trips outside the home are allowed, but people are still encouraged to stay home as much as possible with extra precaution for those at high risk of illness, the older folks and those with existing medical conditions. Face coverings still required where social distancing of 6 feet is not possible and in all public facilities. Essential businesses continue practicing remote work when possible and physical distancing and cleaning practices. Travel remains limited and or mandatory travel quarantine remains in place. There should be no gatherings larger than 20 people. Public facilities remain closed like libraries, museums, gyms, pools, and playgrounds. And that's basically it for that column. There's some more things about risk metrics, but that's a little dry for radio, so we'll let that sit. Now, I want to move to, again, just so we're all as much on the same page as possible for what's expected should the council decide tonight to move into this yellow phase that allows more of the non-essential businesses to open. If they decide to do that, again, it's not a free-for-all to just go back to pre-pandemic levels of service. It doesn't open the floodgates. In fact, it's a very restrictive opening, and I already know of some business owners who, either because the restrictions are too restrictive and too big a hassle and they want to wait a little longer, some businesses will just choose to not reopen. And every business has that right. The fact that the government says non-essential businesses can reopen doesn't mean that the business has to. It means they have the option to if they want. And so, for example, there's one business I know of that could let people in to the store, but is choosing not to. They're going to continue to do everything through curbside and delivery, which is fine. It's the beauty of a free country. But again, those that do want to start opening up again need to be very, very aware of the restrictions. And two, I think it's important that the customers, and I've maintained this throughout, I think it's also important that the customers understand what is expected of these businesses so that they are not pressuring businesses that are following the rules to not follow them. So a customer doesn't go in and say, yeah, I know you're not supposed to do this, but could you break the rule for me? Because you know there are going to be people out there that are tempted to do that. And if you do that and it creates a problem, you end up being part of a mechanism that could get everything shut back down again. So again, we want the customers to know so they don't accidentally or not so accidentally, so they don't end up trying to encourage the businesses to break the rules. That's why I'm going over some of this stuff, because again, I'm sure most of the businesses know, but all of us should know. So we can help the businesses that are going to start reopening to do it successfully and do it sustainably. So it goes two ways. Now, digging down into this, Kathy Renfelt from the Chamber of Commerce was kind enough to put out a series of images that summarize what's expected at the state level for these businesses to be able to start reopening. And these requirements are also expected at the local level. These are also the requirements that if you violate them, as a business operator, put you in serious risk of fines or jail time. And as a customer, if you don't know and follow these, then you're putting the business that you're patronizing at risk. So what Kathy said is a sort of a cover letter for this is, quote, up for discussion at tomorrow, well, it's tonight. Up for discussion at tonight's 6 p.m. special city council meeting, reopen Cordova responsibly. Below are slides from the state's Reopen Alaska Responsibly plan, which Cordova's plan would closely align with. The plan by the city could be approved tonight. If so, non-essential businesses could reopen this week, but would have to adhere to the protocols below and anything else the council decides to impose at tonight's meeting. So she's reinforcing there that council does still have the right to make things more restrictive. It doesn't sound like they really want to. It sounds like things pretty much are going to line up with the state. But, through the course of discussion tonight, somebody may bring up a caution and things could get modified to be a little tighter. So we'll just have to see. So what Kathy has provided here, and you can see these things on the Chamber of Commerce Facebook page, I'm pretty sure, if you want to take a look at them. They're mostly blue and yellow. I printed them out in black and white, but it's a series of photos that provide you a summary of what's in the various state attachments for Mandate 16. That's the state mandate allowing the businesses to reopen. And again, the business owners really should go to the state site. And anybody who's curious and wants to see the full legalese of this, if you go to the state site, look up Mandate 16, and then you'll see these different attachments. There's attachment F for restaurants, and G for personal services, and D for public-facing businesses, and so on. They're broken down fairly specifically. Business owners definitely should look at the legalese on this. Anybody else who's curious can do so as well. But the Chamber has summarized these sort of in plain English. And, for example, the summary of how restaurants can operate if they want to start offering some dine-in service. First off, bars remain closed. There's no walk-in service. Everything is done by reservation only. Restaurants should continue to encourage takeout and systems that minimize contact. Fabric face coverings must be worn by all employees. Groups in a restaurant need to be limited to household members only. That's an important one, by the way. And I would hope if I was running a restaurant when I was taking the reservation, I would ask questions, kind of like that hair salon talked about in the letter that we read earlier. I would ask the questions about, have you traveled recently? How long have you been back in Cordova? Are you showing any symptoms? Is everybody in your party from the same household? And again, not just the same family. Because if mom and dad and son and daughter live in one household in Cordova and aunt and uncle live in another household in Cordova, even though those people are family, they're not supposed to be getting together to go to a restaurant or go to one of these non-essential businesses if they don't live in the same household and are not just exposed to each other all the time, which seems like a freaky thing, but the theory is that if we abide by these rules now and it's successful, then they can continue to be relaxed gradually and get closer to normal. So again, groups limited to household members only. Restaurants need to limit indoor capacity to 25%, and businesses must determine, post, and enforce this new capacity. For people sitting indoors, table seating between non-household members must be at least 10 feet apart. For seating outdoors, it's the same rules as indoors, no more than 20 tables, and all regulatory and legal standards continue to apply. So that's for restaurants. And the big long version of how this works with all the numbers and stuff and the cleaning protocols and everything are on the state website as part of State Mandate 16. This is a summary put out by the Chamber of Commerce. Personal services. This is hair salons, day spas, aesthetics locations, nail salons, barbershops, tattoo shops, body piercing locations, tanning facilities, lactation consultants, acupressure, and so forth. Personal services are allowed one provider, one client, with no waiting rooms. They can do business by reservation only, no walk-ins, and again, one customer per staff member, universal face coverings, at least 6 feet between workstations, sanitizer at the entrance, and facility sanitation between customers. They can't have more than 20 customers or 25% capacity of the building, whichever is smaller. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem for our salons, but at any rate. And, of course, social distancing of at least 6 feet between customer-employee pairs. I guess when they're not actually doing the work on you, because you can't be 6 feet apart if you're cutting somebody's hair. And as you heard, again, I keep forgetting the name, but the lady who wrote the letter we read earlier talked about how her plan is to do that. And nobody that wants to be a customer of one of these personal services businesses should be trying to push them to violate that. We as customers need to do our part to work in harmony with the businesses. to protect them and protect ourselves. Retail businesses. No more than 20 customers or 25% capacity, whichever is smaller. Social distancing of at least 6 feet. Universal fabric face coverings for employees and patrons. Only one adult per household per visit. That's an interesting one. And sensible. They've been saying that, by the way, like at the big grocery stores in the larger communities. If you have to shop, don't bring your kids in with you, or a husband and wife. Just send one person in. So one adult per household per visit. This doesn't. I don't know if this rule pertains to kids, but definitely adults. Sanitizer has to be at the entrance of retail business. Hourly sanitation and staff screening. There has to be pre-shift screening, presumably for staff. Cleaning and disinfecting per CDC guidelines. No person may work if they are symptomatic or ill. And curbside, home delivery, non-entry methods of sale are still encouraged. If you don't have to have people in there, they recommend that you don't, because that provides the maximum safety. But for people that need to be able to come in and see things, those reduced capacity measures, the 25% or 20 customers, whichever smaller, that's why that's in place. And that capacity, by the way, is what the state is going to gradually increase, provided that the overall population is doing its thing to keep cases from spiking. Public-facing businesses are required to work by reservation only. Walk-ins are prohibited. Fabric face coverings must be worn by all employees. No more than 20 customers or 25% of maximum building occupancy, whichever is smaller. Frequent hand washing and sanitation. Pre-shift screening of employees. No symptomatic or ill employees. Employers must establish a plan for employees who get ill and for when they return to work per CDC guidelines. And they need to do cleaning and disinfecting per CDC guidelines. For non-public facing businesses, the summary is fabric face coverings must be worn by all employees. All occupied desks, cubicles, or workspaces must be at least 6 feet apart. Special accommodations must be made for high-risk employees. Maximize remote work for eligible employees. Frequent hand washing and sanitation. Pre-screening of employees, no symptomatic or ill employees. Employers must establish a plan for employees who get ill and for when they return to work per CDC guidelines. And then cleaning and disinfecting per CDC guidelines. Now, quick reminder again, what I'm reading to you here are summaries provided by the Chamber of Commerce, which I have no doubt are accurate and as thorough as you can be in a summary. But if you really want to see the nuts and bolts of these things and be absolutely certain you're reading like the official document, go to the state website and look at these full attachments, because everything is laid out very longly. Not a word, just made that up. It's very longly laid out in those attachments if you read the original ones. Now, moving right along, fishing charters. Here's how they're allowed to work. Passengers must bring their own food and drink on board, and it has to be kept separate from the crew's food and drinks. Passengers and crew members must wear cloth face coverings. Social distancing of at least 6 feet to the extent possible. Household members can fill a boat. Non-household members are allowed if social distancing requirements can be maintained. And again, cleaning, disinfecting, and hand hygiene per CDC protocols. So, thanks again to the Chamber of Commerce for putting out those summaries. That gives you kind of a general overview. But if you really want to drill down into the nuts and bolts of these things, go to covid19.alaska.gov. look for Mandate 16, and when you open that, you'll see links for all of these different attachments that pertain to the specific types of businesses, the restaurants, personal care, fishing charters, facing, non-facing, retail, and whatever else is on there. And, of course, commercial fishermen and others in the fishing industry need to be sure to have a look at the mandates that pertain to them, as I'm sure most in the commercial fishing industry know. And then one final reminder about businesses operating in Cordova. Everybody, every single one of us that is running a business needs to have one of these mutual aid agreements on file with the city, which basically means that we're certifying that we have read the city's requirements and expectations of how we're supposed to operate our businesses, and we're pledging to work within those guidelines. And as you probably heard me say, we filled one out for the radio stations. It's real easy. There's a few blanks to fill in. You read some stuff. You sign that you read and understand the stuff and that you'll abide by the stuff, and then you turn in the stuff, and you're done. It doesn't take all that long. But I wouldn't treat the fine print like one of those things when you update iTunes and they say, do you agree to all the terms and conditions? And nobody ever reads that. They just click agree. I wouldn't do that with this, because all of this stuff hits real close to home. And again, not to be overly repetitive, but if we goof this up in an early phase, either the businesses not doing what they're supposed to do or the customers trying to make the businesses do stuff they're not supposed to do, then we all lose. The restrictions tighten again, and, we go backwards. And it doesn't seem like much of anybody wants to do that. Now, ending on a positive note, I'm very excited about this, for selfish reasons in part. Everybody knows, of course, that graduation is not going to be normal this year. The schools have come up with a remarkable alternate plan involving video and the internet and social distancing and being very careful to hand out the diplomas in a safe way. And it's a shame that of all the years for us to get hit with a pandemic, it would be the centennial year, because the class of 2020 is the 100th graduating class. Well, not to be deterred from celebrating while doing so within social distancing mandates, a parade has been planned. They're calling it the Centennial Drive. And I quote from the flyer, "Come out and celebrate the 100th graduating class as they drive through town, park or stand along the route, and cheer on the graduates while maintaining all social distancing guidelines." This will be May 16th, starting at 7 p.m. The parade begins at the ferry terminal and ends at the city airstrip. This printout I have is sucky, and I can't make out the route real clearly, but you can see this. I know the Cordova Bulletin Board Facebook page has got it, and there are probably other places that you can see it to see exactly what the route is. But this is a great idea. I mean, if we can't celebrate in the gym all together, let's have a parade. Yeah. And the reason I selfishly am excited about this is a member of that graduating class contacted me yesterday, day before, I think it was yesterday, and asked if we would use the radio stations to play a celebratory list of songs. And by the way, these kids know how to pick out songs. You're going to hear some good songs. But just so everybody could be listening to the same music at the same time over our radio broadcast. So they asked if they could send me this list of songs, and we pull them and put it together. And I said, gee, let me think. Yeah, we'll do that. So I am thrilled. I'm honored to get asked to do that. and to put our facilities to work for it. So again, that's May 16th, 7 p.m., a parade of graduates from the ferry terminal to the city airstrip by Eak Lake. And again, the organizers of this ask with all sincerity and urgency that people not use this as an excuse to mess up with social distancing and with the masks and all that. Do all the stuff that we're supposed to do so we can celebrate this without having it turn into, first of all, something irresponsible, and worst case scenario, a situation where people make people sick. Because something we have to keep in the back of our minds is just because we haven't had a positive test doesn't mean that the virus isn't here, particularly in somebody asymptomatic. Because some people get it and they don't show any symptoms and they never even know. But it's obviously too early to use these graduation celebrations as an excuse to drop your guard. And the organizers, again, really want to see people celebrating, cheering, and so forth, but doing so within all the social distancing mandates. So we're going to end on that very positive note, and thank you for joining us for the Town Meeting program, brought to you by Cordova Wireless Communications. If you missed anything, if you want to hear the show again, if you want to share the show with somebody else, then you can go to our YouTube channel. Robbie will have it posted there as soon as possible after we wrap it up. That's youtube.com/Cordova TV. We still have our daily briefings coming up this afternoon, 1 p.m., 5 p.m., 8 p.m., and those are also all archived on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. Have a great day, 6 feet away from one another, and we'll see you next time for the Town Meeting Talk Show on KLAM.